Welcome to episode 21 of Trad Takes, as always hosted by the Traditionalists. Trad Takes is now old enough to legally drink in the US. Anyway, please like, share, subscribe, leave a comment. I may start next week's conversation with it. We'll start out with a comment on last week's video from Jamie Kennedy, 9628. Politics makes me grumpy too. Couldn't say it better myself. I'm glad I'm not alone there. And then from EC2, a couple of comments. The first one was, you all need a new logo. And upon receiving a question of, well, why? EC2 says, the current logo is simply bad optics. It looks like a 1980s tuxedo rental company. My suggestion is something like a psychedelic Shiroi or black and red Catholic Crusader military logo. Well, thank you, EC2. Calling our logo like a 1980s tuxedo rental company actually is pretty awesome. So that's not that's not putting me off of our current logo. That's actually making me like it more. But no, we do appreciate suggestions. I will bring that up with the traditionalists and see if that's something we're looking to change, but probably not anytime soon. Thanks for the comments, both Jamie Kennedy and EC2. On to the news. So for today, what could we possibly talk about besides the civil war that's currently happening in the Republican coalition? For anyone who doesn't know, the falling out between Trump and Elon Musk was as imminent as it was predictable. And as a conservative and as a traditionalist, it's fairly easy for me to say that I'm not taking a side here, or not a formal side. Elon Musk is not and never was conservative or traditional. He's always considered himself a liberal, and he likes to say that the left left him. He's obviously got a ton of kids, but it's by multiple women. He doesn't hold to traditional morals, obviously. But with all that said, his economic view of the big, beautiful bill is actually the more conservative and traditional view. He doesn't want a bill that, granted that it has good things in it, but he doesn't want a bill that also adds $2 trillion plus to the national debt, and only makes these feeble attempts at cutting government spending. So that's Elon. Trump, much like Elon, is also not a conservative or a traditionalist. He is not and has never been. I mean, he's on his third wife. He was a Democrat for most of his life, and like Elon, the left left him. Now, over the past 10 years, he's espoused some fairly conservative viewpoints, and he's done a lot for conservatism and traditionalism. For example, see the appointing of good judges to the Supreme Court, which allowed the overturning of Roe versus Wade. So he's done a lot for promoting conservatism and even in some cases traditionalism. But you would be lying to yourself if you called him a conservative or a traditionalist. And like Elon, he has a lot of lefty ideas. When it comes to the big, beautiful bill, he's apparently okay trading off further adding to the U.S. debt for the good things that are in the big, beautiful bill. Honestly, I think he simply just wants the bill to pass, not because of what's in it or the net good to bad, but just because he wants the bragging rights of passing a big bill. Anyway, so that's how the trouble started. Elon put out a tweet that he was disappointed in Trump and the Republicans who were passing this pork-filled bill. And Trump, of course, responded, probably not as aggressively, but pretty directly, and then just set Elon off. And Elon has been indisputably the aggressor, and a very childish aggressor, in this fight. He rightly points out that Trump is a bit of a hypocrite. He's been posting Trump's own tweets condemning Congress for passing bills that add to the national debt, and now here Trump is pushing a bill that adds to the national debt. So to me, that wasn't the problem. I think that was a legitimate concern. But after Trump replied and apparently did something to set Elon off, he's been flooding X with retweets and mockery of Trump, linking Trump with Epstein, which, whether or not you think that's a thing, it really doesn't have any relevance to the BBB. But he's kind of behaving like a hormonal teenager that just got broken up with. Like, that's kind of how he's acting. And of course, Trump is Trump. He's not handling it with grace or class, but he's slinging his own mud back, and, to a lesser degree. And honestly, it's hard to blame him. So, who's right? Which side should we be on? For me, when it comes to the two of them, it's a King Kong versus Godzilla. Having them fight like this there's no winners, there's just destruction. And to me, more important than the actual personalities that are fighting are the actual details of this big, beautiful bill, which I'm going to spend a few minutes to try to highlight and let you, dear listeners, decide for yourselves whether you're for or against the passage of this bill. So this bill is over 1,000 pages, which on its own could go into the cons section. But I'm going to start with the pros, and I'm only going to hit some of the highlights that stuck out to me. There are certainly other pros in this bill besides the ones I'm listing, but for the sake of time, I will only list the ones that stuck out. So the first and biggest reason that this whole bill is even going through at all is to extend the tax cuts passed during Trump's first term. This one is big, huge, one might say. Lower taxes, or keeping lower taxes, is obviously good. The next one is it funds the completion of the border wall with Mexico. Also, obviously a good thing. Border wall is a good thing. I would like to have the funding taken from some pre-existing funding rather than help go towards the debt, but if we're going to go into debt, this is something that is worth doing. So border wall with Mexico. It reverses the electric vehicle mandate. This is obviously good, and Trump is implying that this is the single and only point Elon is actually mad about. And I'm sure that's part of it, that Elon is mad that the EV mandate is going to hurt his business. But I don't personally think that that's all of it. That's a good. It ends federal funding for Planned Parenthood. I mentioned that on my podcast last week. Obviously a good. And then my sneaky favorite is it removes the tax and registration requirements for firearm suppressors. I'm excited about that one. So that sounds great, right? Taken in isolation, I would love this bill. But here's the rub. The cons, first and worst and most obvious, is it adds approximately $2.4 trillion to the deficit. And I've heard a lot of arguments from a lot of people on the right, people I respect, basically saying, well, 2.4 trillion, we're already 36 trillion in debt. What's a little bit more to get all these good things passed? But for me, it's actually a moral wrong to impose this kind of debt on the citizens of the U.S., especially the younger generations who are going to get saddled with it. It puts us closer to default. It makes it harder to dig out. And it's unconscionable. The president and the members of Congress who ran and won on lowering the deficit, the first thing they do when they're in office is to turn around and make it worse. Like, I can't rectify that in my mind. And if you can, great. If you can tie yourself in the mental knots that it takes to say it's okay in this case, I'm happy for you, but I can't do it. I'm going to quote James Madison. A public debt is a public curse. I whined and moaned about it when the Democrats did it, and I'm going to whine and moan about it when the Republicans do. Debt is debt. I don't care who's putting us into it, right wing or left wing. So that's obviously the biggest and the worst. This next one is kind of sneaky. I haven't heard anyone really talking about it, but it takes away the state's ability to regulate AI. Anything that doesn't allow the states to govern themselves and instead puts it in the hands of the federal government is generally bad. And in this case, it's extra bad because you might have right-wing states or conservative states that, for example, will look to ban or at least regulate AI-produced pornography and things of that nature. This bill has a little carve-out that takes that right away from the states. So that's not ideal. It further strengthens the executive branch, particularly the president, to be able to defy the courts. Now again, hardcore MAGA types may like this. Well, they may like it now. They might like that Trump can ignore what he thinks are bad rulings from the courts. But let's swap that and look at it from what will happen if this goes forward. This would also allow a President Biden or a President Kamala or a President Gavin Newsom to defy, say, the court's overturning of Roe versus Wade. This is not precedent that you want to set. The presidency is already too powerful. We don't need to give them extra power just because he's on our side right now. And my final knock, and there are a lot of knocks, but the final one is just kind of the catch-all. Simply the size of this bill. It's really a political spending spree that's wrapped up in a ribbon of tax cuts. The bill is over 1,000 pages, full of carve-outs and earmarks and subsidies to whatever special interest group had Congress's ear at the time when they were writing it. And again, it's shameful for a party who ran on draining the swamp to push a bill like this. So that's the short summary. That's my summary of the big, beautiful bill. What do you think? Do the pros outweigh the cons? If you were in Congress, would you sign your name to this bill to pass it? Let me know in the comments what you think. I'm legitimately interested to kind of gauge what the vibes are with this bill in traditionalist circles. I could certainly understand the argument for the bill or against it. My personal take, if you can't tell, is that I would not sign this bill. If it does pass, I'm going to be happy about extending those tax cuts. I'm going to be super happy about defunding Planned Parenthood. I will celebrate by buying a suppressor for myself without a tax stamp. But for me, those pros don't outweigh the cons. In a perfect world, and I know we don't live in a perfect world, I would pull the big beautiful bill back, or at least bounce it back and forth between the Senate and the House, scrub out 900 pages of unnecessary pork, and simply make it a tax bill with a couple other small wins embedded. And I know we don't live in a perfect world, so I guess I'm not surprised that this mess of a bill is still the best we're getting out of a right-wing president and House and Senate. And all that to say, I'm not Team Elon on it. He's acting like a petulant child, but I do lean against this bill. And that is all we have time for today. God bless you all, and God bless these United States of America.